Okay, good afternoon and welcome to this multi-location meeting of the Democratic Services Committee on Monday, 3rd of October. I am Councillor Saifur Rahman and I am chair of this committee. Please, can you ensure that your phone are switched to silent for the duration of the meeting? In addition, when asked to raise your hand, if members who are virtually viewing this meeting could raise your electronic hand, and for members in the committee room, just raise your hand. Just to make you all aware, today's meeting will be recorded. Moving on, agenda item 2 then, declaration of interest. Those members wish to declare an interest, can you please indicate now? I don't see any. Okay, thank you. Moving on to item 3, which is role and function of the Democratic Services Committee. These are on pages 3 to 8. I'm going to hand you over to Craig to take this item. Thank you. Craig, over to you.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Chair. So welcome members to the first meeting of the Democratic Services Committee of the new administration. One of the things we thought would be very helpful to have before members today was the actual functions and remit of what the Democratic Services Committee actually is, in case there were some members who were unfamiliar. It was actually a committee that was established by legislation back in 2011. So we've been running this committee now for almost 11 years, quite surprisingly where time goes. It's got quite a wide remit, effectively, this committee. Its predominant focus is to look at the democratic services element within the council and what support ultimately we can be providing to members in the discharge of your duties then as elected representatives of your community. You will be involved in looking at some standard reports ultimately which we have to bring to you on an annual basis about the various strategies and systems that the council has in place to support you from the democratic services perspective, which includes the adequacy of the provision of staff, accommodation and other resources. But what's quite interesting as well is you tend to get involved in a lot more of the other democratic processes which the council runs. So, for example, during the last administration, we looked at public speaking protocols, petition schemes, and as we move forward over the next couple of years, we'll be looking at further refining those so we can encourage more take-up in the democratic processes, that we encourage the public. And a lot of our work is going to be centred around our participation strategy, which again is all designed about having more people involved in the democratic process. One of your other functions is that you can be tasked to undertake some specific duties that the full council asks you to do. So back 2 years ago, we started a review of our constitution, for example, to look at ways in which we could improve it and make it more transparent ultimately to the community. So this committee will be tasked in working with me potentially for that then as well. But similarly as well, from your own perspectives, there may be areas which you think you'd like to discuss ultimately more from a democratic services element and how we can best help you in your role as member. So when we start talking about our forward work programs, there'll be an opportunity for you to add in any additional items that you think would actually be beneficial, which we can look then to how best we can support you and to take forward. So all in all, hopefully this will be quite an interesting committee. It's quite dynamic with the work that we'll be doing throughout it. I'll be happy to take any questions, Chair, on what those remit and functions ultimately are, but please do speak up if there are any issues you'd wish us to start considering and bringing forward reports to you on that future basis. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Craig. Members, do you have any comment or question? Okay, no, thank you. Moving on to item number 4 then, which is multi-location meeting policy. You can find them on page 9 to page 32. Again, I believe, is it Craig you're taking this item?
Stacey will be taking
Stacey, sorry. Stacey, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. And this is indeed one of the first documents that you'll be looking at as your responsibilities under the Democratic Services Committee. So here we've got the Council's multi-location meeting policy. So as members will be aware, all meetings of Council are now required to be held on a hybrid basis, meaning participants can sign in remotely or be physically present, as we are today. And the Council is required to develop a policy around those arrangements. So this is the policy which builds on the arrangements that have been put in place since we all returned to buildings following the pandemic. And it just puts some details around some of the administrative matters, behaviour, etiquette and things like that, which you can see in the policy. So from page 13 onwards, you can see the detail of the policy there. And following any comments and observations and additions to the policy today, we'll be asking to take that to full council then for ratification, because this affects the council as a whole and all meetings that the council administers. So happy to take any questions, comments or any additions today, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Stacey. Okay, I'll open the floor then for any questions or comment on this draft policy. Okay, Phil, over to you, please.
Lovely, thank you, Chair. Just a little one, that's all it is. It's on page 17 of the report, page 5 of the actual report. Point 5B, second bullet point. It's one about participants must also be able to see and be seen by each other. Now, the council meeting last week, a couple of people spoke and we couldn't see them. And I think, you know, if they are on remotely, I think they should be seen as well when they're actually making a point. I think there were 2 speakers last week and you couldn't see who was speaking. Thank you, Chair.
Perhaps I'll take that then to strengthen the policy. When remote participants are speaking, the camera should be switched on for that purpose. So perhaps we can just strengthen that a little bit. Thank you for that point.
Thank you, Stacey.
Okay, Councillor Peter Rees, please. Peter? Peter, you're on mute.
Okay, I couldn't get, sorry, Chair, I couldn't get off mute.
That's okay.
On that point that Phil has just risen, what's the point of seeing somebody then? What's the purpose of actually seeing? As long as they ask a question, whether you see them or not is irrelevant. And then I'll get on to my other question, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Rees. It's actually the wording from the legislation, and it's actually the wording that's there is be seen and be heard. So it's the interpretation of being seen, which we would interpret to mean being seen on a screen. I think we do understand sometimes if there's bad reception, sometimes switching a camera off can help if there's a lot of participants on the meeting. But I think for transparency, the Act actually says be seen and heard, which is how we've interpreted that. So I hope that answers the question there. Thank you,
Okay.
Chair.
And my further question, Chair, was at these meetings, whether they're held remote or whether people come in remote or whatever, how is that their attendance monitored?
Thanks, Councillor Rees. So the Democratic Services officers will monitor and log attendance, and there is no difference whether you attend remotely or physically. We do not differentiate. So if you're present today, you are present today, whether you've been physical or remote, and there is no difference. So I hope that answers that question.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you, Peter. Anyone else has any questions or comment? Okay, I'm going to bring Craig back in now. Craig?
Thank you, Chair. Just one additional point I would just bring to members' attention. Something we will see a slight change of by the time hopefully we go into one of our next council meetings is Welsh language. Is something we've actually been developing at the moment. So we were waiting to find out how the service was going to be offered by Microsoft Teams, which is the platform that we use for some of these council meetings. We're now told that they do have the ability for dual language capability for some of these meetings. So we're going to be testing it over the course of the next couple of weeks, ready to go live with that service. Hopefully within our next council meeting or before the end of this year. But the testing begins now, so we'll see how that goes in that sense.
Okay, Peter, I can see your hand is still raised. Is that a legacy hand?
Yes, sorry, Chair, it's a legacy hand.
All right, okay, thank you, Peter. I don't see any further indications, so can I take you to the recommendation on page 12, please? Can I get someone to move the recommendation? Alan? And someone to Councillor Rogers, brilliant. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to the next item then, which is item number 5, councillor safety and well-being. These are on pages 33 to 36. Is it Craig or is it Stacey? Stacey, okay, over to you, Stacey, for that item.
Thank you, Chair. And this is just some background information for members today. So this is going to give you some information in relation to the work that's ongoing in relation to councillor safety and well-being. So as well as providing a background on what has been done to date, you can see in the report that the next steps in a programme called Debate Not Hate, which is building on the Civility in Public Life campaign. And this is work that's been done in the background from the WLGA and the LGA. There's nothing for the committee to decide on today. It was just giving you some background in this introductory meeting so you can see the work that is ongoing in the background. And I thought Democratic Services Committee might be interested to note that there is further information and working groups that are being established by the WLGA to look into this going forward. So any opportunity to join these working groups, Craig and I will bring to you for you to nominate yourselves if you so wish, and we'll keep bringing you the information that we are being given on this very important topic. But it was just to give you some background today into these areas for your information, Chair, this afternoon.
Okay, thank you, Stacey. Anybody has any questions or comment? No? Okay, thank you very much. The next item then, we move on to item 6, which is forward work program. And this is on page 37 to 38. Stacey, over to you again.
Thank you, Chair. So early doors, you can see the forward work programme is not particularly populated with dates because this is your first meeting of the Democratic Services Committee. But what you can see there is a flavour of the annual topics that we are required to bring you, which we've yet to schedule into set dates, which we will do now going forward. But as is a forward work programme, these are not set in stone. So any ideas that you've got as a committee or through the chair, please bring forward so we can start scoping some task and finish groups. We might, for example, look into the councillor safety and wellbeing group as it progresses. But you've got there a flavour of the things that we are mandated to bring you for your consideration. So you can see how the work of the committee will be built up over the civic year. So it's just for your information today, just to start considering. And by the time we have our next meeting, then we'll have built up a date specific one. And if there's any further observations from the committee, we'd be happy to build those topics in as well, Chair.
Thank you, Stacey. So can I just ask, Stacey, the list you got on page 37, if members wish to add anything to the list, they come direct to you or do they have to go through myself? How does that work?
Did no oppose on then. Probably through you, Chair, and then we can have a discussion through the committee. But it's always a moving feast, a forward work programme. Those are the things we're obligated to bring you. But through the chair, if there's anything the committee would like to consider, we can obviously take that forward. And task and finish groups is another way if we can look into something in detail. So that would be the way forward there, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Members, do you have any questions or comment? Yes, Nathan, please, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to clarify, is the 3rd of April 2023 the next time this committee will meet, or as Stacey's outlined, will we be meeting between now and then? And if so, Saif, you've answered the question. I just wanted to know then what type of things would we be feeding into between now and then, but that's my question, is the 3rd of April the next time we're meeting?
Stacey?
Yeah. Thank you, Vice Chair. This committee is actually only mandated to meet twice a year. But of course, you can put in additional meetings should you wish. So that's the next scheduled meeting that you do have to meet your legal requirements. But should you wish to call an extraordinary meeting or a task and finish group between the chair, yourself and members, we are able to do that as well.
Okay, thank you, Stacey. I only wanted that clarified, as maybe you can help me as well. If this committee focuses on the, I think it's the Local Government and Elections Act 2021, and the potential to scope out some sort of report for then to understand the implications of adopting an STV system, as is outlined in that report. I'm not entirely sure. I was looking this morning because I was under the assumption it was November 23 it had to be implemented, but I think I'm not quite sure of the dates, so I'd have to get back to you on that. But is that the type of thing that this committee looks at as well?
Okay, I'm going to ask Craig to come in to answer that, Nathan.
Thank
No
you,
problem,
Councillor
thank you.
John. So as it stands at the moment, it's not a specific task that actually rests in the Democratic Services Committee. Full council would have to make that determination as to whether they want Democratic Services Committee to actually start considering a lot of these issues. So if it's something that members decide collectively that they would like Democratic Services Committee to do, there would have to be a request to full council to enable this consideration ultimately to take place, and that would be undertaken via a notice of motion or another kind of process in that regard.
Understand completely. Thank you very much for the clarity.
Okay, thank you, Nathan, and thank you, Craig and Stacey. Do we have any further indication from any other members? No? Okay, thank you. Next item is item 7, urgent items. We don't have any urgent item for today's meeting. There are no further items or anything else to discuss, so this is a very quick and short meeting. So thank you very much, members, for attending, and I now declare the meeting closed. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.